Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to start with chapter 2 of your history, that is the growth of nationalism. Now, all of you have studied regarding the freedom struggles which have taken place in India before the independence of India. Now, throughout the world, this freedom struggle, the history of freedom struggle is quite common. Otherwise, independent nations wouldn't have been born out of it. Okay. So, in our last chapter, we have discussed about how the modern age brought with it different revolutions in different sectors, right? Like in the Renaissance, the revival of art and learning, then the Reformation brought about in matters of religion, then came the Industrial Revolution, where machines brought with it great advancement and technological development. So, with this, now we are going to talk about the nationalistic feelings which had grown throughout the world and which led to the birth of different nations, different concepts of nations throughout the world. So, let's start with the United States of America. So, how was the United States of America born? The United States of America was born out of a great revolution which was called the American War of Independence. The American Revolution changed a country of several colonies under British monarchy into a republic with a strong democratic system. So before America was independent, was an independent nation, it was basically a colony of different countries, especially of England, of the British monarchy. And with that, in order to get independence from these colonizers of the British, today we see America standing as a separate republic having a great democratic system. So they all freed from the British system of monarchy, and today United States of America is one of the most powerful, richest, and advanced countries of the world. Now, what is the American War of Independence? So, the first thing we should think about the discovery when during the Renaissance. We have talked about that the European voyagers, the European explorers were trying to move throughout the world, and in the process, Christopher Columbus, wanting to find out India, he found out what we called the New World, which was called the West Indies later on. Okay, so in this way, the American continent was discovered. In the 17th and 18th century, England was going through religious and political turmoil. That means all the Reformation and all were going on. So there was a massive chaos and confusion regarding that, and there was the demarcation of the Protestants and the Catholics, which we have studied in our previous chapter. Now, the Protestants wanted to escape from the religious persecution of James I and set their eyes to the New World. So now the Protestants wanted to flee Europe, especially England, and they wanted to settle down in this new world of America. So these people were known as the Pilgrim Fathers, where they went on to explore new land across the Atlantic Ocean and settle as a new colony. By the middle of the 18th century, there were 13 English colonies in North America along the Atlantic coast. But soon the colonies fell out the British government and resented the laws which the English government imposed upon them. Next come to the Stamp Act. The root cause of the resentment of the economic policy of England. The English Parliament had forbidden the colonies to use non-British ships in their trade. There were restrictions on certain products such as tobacco, cotton, sugar, which could be exported only to England. So there were many restrictions, although these Protestants had left England in order to have their free nation, but still, just because they were under the English monarchy, these Protestant peoples, or the Pilgrim Fathers as they were called, so they were put under many restrictions and subdued by the English monarchy. So for this, heavy duties were imposed, heavy taxes were imposed on the import of goods to the colonies from other places. Now, since they were colonies, they had to import and export the goods because they didn't know about the new lands. So, the economic policy of England impeded the growth of industry and trade in the colonies. That means they did not allow so much of growth in these parts of the continent. So, in 1765, the English Parliament passed the Stamp Act, which imposed taxes on all the businesses transactions in the American colonies. The revenue from the taxes was used to fill the coffers of the English government and not in interest of the colonies. So, The Protestants who had settled down as colonists in America, or what we call in this new world, they were paying taxes for the benefit of the government in England, which they resented. As a result of this, many revolts broke out in many towns and cities of the colonies in this region. Then, the American revolutionaries were inspired by the ideas of the English philosophers like John Locke, Harrington, and Milton, who popularized the belief that man had certain fundamental rights which no government have any right to infringe upon. That means man has certain fundamental basic rights for survival where the government has nothing to interfere on. So, American thinkers like Thomas Jefferson, they were also inspired by these French philosophers, and they started provocating the people and they proclaiming the colonists' right to rebellion and encouraged their increasing desire for independence. During this time, when these taxes and stamp act revenues were being imposed on the colonies, there was an incident which happened in London. Now, when the representatives of the colonies declared that English Parliament had no right to levy taxes on them, they adopted the slogan which is called "No taxation without representation," which is a very important and very well-known slogan. That means if the colonists were not represented anywhere, then why would they give the taxes? Okay, so this caused a lot of tensions in the political system of the country. Now, this tax on tea led to a decisive event in 1773 when several colonies refused to unload the tea coming in the English ships. In Boston, when the governor ordered a ship to be unloaded, a group of citizens led by Samuel Adams, dressed as American Indians, boarded the ship and dumped crates of tea into the water. This incident is popularly called the Boston Tea Party incident, which added fuel to the fire of uprising of the colonies. The representatives of the colonies met in Philadelphia in 1774 and sent an appeal to the then British ruler King George III to withdraw these repressive acts, and at that time the king was enraged by this defiant attitude of the colonies against declared the war and sent British troops to suppress the rebellion in Massachusetts. Okay, so the colonies wanted to freedom from the English monarchy, and thus they gave a petition which the English monarchy under King George III rejected, and he declared war. On July 4, 1776, the representative of 13 colonies met as a group and adopted the Declaration of Independence, which asserted that all men are equal and they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that means non-transferable rights, and that these united colonies ought to be free and independent states. So the British government was defeated in the war, and George Washington was a naval general who led the colonies to victory. In 1783, the Treaty of Paris was signed and English government recognized the independence of the 13 colonies. In this way, America got independence from the colonial rule of the British. Now, what was the significance? What was the significance of this American Revolution? First, it inspired many revolutions which took place in Europe later in the 19th century. It encouraged Spanish and Portuguese colonies in Central and South America to rebel and gain their independence. This led to the formation of a republican form of government, and the American Constitution, which was the first written republican constitution, was framed in history. Where the great founders are the Thomas Paine, Benjamin Franklin, Patrick Henry, Thomas Jefferson, and James Madison, John Adams. And 4th of July was celebrated as the American Independence Day. So this is the story of the American independence, okay, which resulted from the American War of Independence. So I would request all my students to go through the portion from your text so that you have a better understanding of this portion. Thank you, everyone.